welcome to episode 98 of Missle Industries Ford Falcon 351 project. And yes, we are hot on the heels of episode 97, where I discovered that this fundamental problem with my car's ignition system was something under the dash that's probably gone undiagnosed the whole time I've had the car. So with the benefit of hindsight, I've replaced the carby, the entire ignition system leads, spark plugs, fuel pump, trying to track down why the car would intermittently stall. Now, after I jumped the coil directly from the battery and my high ignition distributor went from running very poorly to running pretty well considering how far out the timing was, it's led me to the conclusion that the power supply for the coil is no longer up to the job, probably never was up to the job, and whilst it read 12 volts when it wasn't under load, I suspect there's either too much resistance in the circuit or there's something else going on. But today I'm going to bypass all of that, make a circuit directly from the ignition straight to the coil, and I'm going to put a relay in amongst all of that for the original coil circuit. Actually, now that I think about it, I could just put that wire straight from the ignition straight to the coil. No, I'll retain the relay because there's a mobilizer in there somewhere. So that's the plan for today's episode. Now, I did this years ago with a Jag I used to have in the middle of Toowoomba, half an hour before I had to go to my cousin-in-law's engagement party, because it just stopped. And I had to jury rig a wire from the ignition to the coil to get it to go again. But today I can do this in the comfort of my garage because the car's safely at home, not in the middle of a country town far, far from where I live. First things first though, I will tidy up those ignition leads so the engine bay is a little bit more presentable before I get carried away running any more wires anywhere. Okay, now that that's tidied up, I should probably go and get myself some supplies for this project. $23 for a relay? Cool, inflation. Progress report. I have the relay set up, but I'm currently ginning around trying to sort out all my earths to make sure this all works. And I've actually got no earth for the signal from the ignition as it exists now, so I'm not getting 12 volts across my relay and no 12 volts across the coil. If I test the positive side of the relay and ground, I get 12 volts, so I gather that's where my problem lays right now. So I'll make up another earth for the loom and I'll leave that negative coil wire off. I think it's tack feed anyway, so I'll leave negative coil wire off the relay and earth the relay through the body and I should be all good. So I've sorted out my earthing issues. I've got the tack feed just hanging off for the time being while I figure out whether I can get the engine to start or not. I've got my relay set up, it's all earthed up properly. I've run the hot wire to the battery with a fuse in the circuit. Now I'm going to go see what kind of fuses I can get away with the system. I suspect if I start with 7.5 amps, that'll be heaps. And I should be alright. Found some fuses at last. I knew I had a whole lot of these BMW fuses lying around. So I'm starting off with the 7.5 amp fuse in the circuit. And I'll just see if the car starts. Might help if I'd plug the distributor back in. So the 7.5 amp fuse, not enough. 10 amp fuse. Still looks to be operational. Okay, 10 amp fuse in place, distributor powered up. Time to see if this works. Nope. Alright, everything's plugged in, everything's powered up. Let's see if I can get it to go. Timing sounds like it's out. Nothing's catching fire. That's quite warm. Let's see if I've got my tack signal back by jumping those two cables together. Should theoretically work. Yes. Right, I've got spark, I've got tack signal, the relay's working as it should. I did accidentally ground the coil out against the body, so the coil is quite warm right now, but I've disconnected that earth and I'm going to let the coil cool down while I run some wires into the cabin of the car to connect up to the ignition so I can finish this jury rig ignition system for my new distributor. So I've run my wire into the cabin of my car and under the dash, and as I look in here to figure out where to splice my hot wire in, I notice there's already a relay in here doing relay things, and chances are splicing into that bird's nest is not going to give me the best results compared to going directly to the battery and adding a fuse into that circuit. So what I'm going to do is go directly to the battery and cover this all back up and pretend I never saw it. All wired up. Now let's get the car started and warmed up and mess with the timing a bit. I have to reevaluate my starting technique because I had to pull the fuse to get it to stop. So it looks like my jury rig wiring system straight to the battery with a relay is not going to work because for some reason the coil is not being powered down while the engine's running, which might be like a self-perpetuating loop. So I'm going to have to run that red wire there all the way to the cabin after all and find keyed ignition wire to connect this to. So when I turn the key off, the car shuts down rather than just continues to run. But how good does it sound now? So I have consulted my XC Gregory's manual, and it looks to me like the ignition wire is the red-green wire, which I'm going to need to splice my new circuit into. That will give me switchable power to my coil operated by the relay on the existing circuit. So that should all work. I've taken my old steering column and ignition out to just do a quick confirmation. Yellow is power in, and this one here, the red with green tracer, is what is activated when the key is turned to the ignition. So all systems are go. Now that the car's wired up for the second attempt at this, it's time to open the garage door up and fire this car up and see if I can turn it off with the key. Yay, it works. So yesterday while the car was nice and hot, I wound the idle speed back down because it's time to re-establish the minimum amount of idle speed this car needs to stay running. On the old setup, I had the idle set quite high to try and minimize the stalling. It wasn't really that effective, so I've wound the idle speed back down almost a full turn to get this car to idle at a sensible rate, and that has required me to reset the accelerated pump jet clearance. Now, from what I can gather, there's all kinds of ways to do this, but I've been told 15 thou gap between the spring and the arm should be the ballpark to get this accelerated pump jet to work properly. So I'm going to go with that today and see how it plays out. Time to test drive this new distributor and see if the stalling has gone away. O'clock. See how long we go before the engine starts to stall. Half an hour of driving, stinking hot day, idle speed turned right down, no stalling, none. So hopefully I have found the solution to my stalling problems. Summary time for episode 98. It appears the distributor replacement and the new wiring have solved my stalling issues. I've got the idle set to the lowest it's ever been, and on today's half an hour drive there wasn't one single instance of stalling, even though it's a very hot day and I'm running all kinds of accessories now like power steering. It didn't miss a beat, and I had a chance to do a few pulls out in the countryside, and it's not laying over at 3000 RPM like it used to. It's going right off the end of the 6-cylinder tack, and I'm shifting pretty much because it looks horrendous, going over an indicated 6000 RPM. So next step is track down that fresh oil leak I've just inherited. Uh-oh. Seems to be an oil trail down the driveway. More there. More there. There. coming from. Whatever that is, it's dripping off the bottom of the fuel pump. It's gone everywhere.